Jerry, a good educational system must provide equal opportunities for all. I gave the example of Clennon Washington King being imprisoned and committed for applying to the University of Mississippi, while white people were not imprisoned or committed to a mental institution. We need to ensure that individuals, regardless of their economic background, gender, location, and disability status, have equal access to a quality education. We have and continue to make progress in Ghana with massive investments in public education. Yet, we face significant challenges in both access to education and the quality of education. So, Jerry, what are your thoughts on some of the challenges plaguing the Ghana educational system?
Thank you, Abu. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'd like to start by acknowledging the contribution that teachers have made to our nation-building effort over the past 6 decades, even with all the financial and logistical constraints which we will be speaking about. Without them, none of us will be sitting here today, so I'd like to acknowledge them and to thank them. Having said that, we still have some problems and challenges in the sector, and I'll list a couple of them that I have identified, which I'm sure most of you would have identified as well. The first one is universal access to quality primary and secondary education, particularly for low-income households, remains a challenge. It is constrained, and there are barriers to entry and participation. We've spoken about pedagogy, you've spoken about it, and the previous speaker also spoke about it. There's a widely held perception that the teaching methods and the learning activities and the nature of assessments done in Ghanaian schools is producing suboptimal outcomes ultimately. I have not seen empirical data to support that, but as I said, it's a widely held perception. I'll be very glad to see what data supports this perception. Perhaps the one that really irks me is the commercialization of educational services through private tuition and vacation classes to augment regular school curriculum. This has become a mainstream practice in Ghana, and I think from perhaps the late 70s through to now, it's become very prevalent, and something that should have been the exception is now the norm. Everybody goes through some form of private tuition and vacation classes. Now, this arrangement favors mostly urban and middle-class households and disproportionately discriminates against rural households. And I doubt its long-term effectiveness. The other thing is the funding gaps and the disproportionate allocation of resources to wages at the expense of developing educational facilities and educational tools. I do remember this from my days in policy, and I'll be pleasantly surprised if this has changed. But the bulk of the education budget went to paying teachers and staff, and there was very little left to build infrastructure, to develop facilities, and to improve teaching methods. And the final one is the affordability, which is linked to the universal access and the commercialization. Perhaps the emergence of private and commercial education reflects the true cost of education, or at least it is a proxy. Either way, most households in Ghana are priced out of access to the kind of educational instruction that will ensure that optimal grades are obtained in a very competitive environment. Now, I would like to talk about the outcome of these observations briefly to buttress my point. Because if these are the foundations of Ghana's educational sector, then it should not be too surprising with the outcomes that we are observing. One, limited applied skills to solve contextual problems, especially in the areas of mathematics, science, and technology. This in turn leads to limited capacity to generate economic activities that can create jobs and provide better economic security. There are limited pathways to social mobility at the household level, that is, to attain middle class status or better, and this could affect future generations that are unborn. In other words, your chances in life are down to the lottery of one's birth, which is not a very complementary arrangement to have in any society. And finally, the absence of a critical mass of functional citizens with a high level of civic awareness, ability to hold themselves and authorities to account. That's the quality of citizenry that we want our educational system to produce. Citizens who are able to participate and make meaningful contributions to social and economic development. I don't think we are at the stage where we can boldly say that our educational system is giving us these outcomes.